Welcome back. We're going to jump into this third segment of our chapter, and we're going to talk about challenges for men, for male leaders in an increasingly diverse environment. And the authors, I guess, um, maybe you want to call it a disclaimer, but they mention that power, control, and influence resides with white men, and that's one of the first things they talk about. And the authors take this tradition as a given. And as an economist, that's the guess the flexibility that you typically see in economists. I don't think these two individuals are economists, but that's probably a fairly decent approach on their part. They're just, they're taking it as a given. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's their viewpoint or that's the way they think, or it's just to them, it's a given and fact of life. And when you're talking about challenges with male leadership, especially in an inclusive or diverse environment, there's kind of three levels that the authors point out. There's a lack of inclusive mindset, so that's challenge number one. Challenge number two is maximizing the benefits of diversity while reducing its potential downside. And the third challenge is dealing with the paradox of building cultured homogeneity while allowing for diversity. And I think, at least from my experience, the third one made the third stage or the third challenge maybe a little more on the difficult side. Lack of and we'll jump in with the first challenge, and it's lack of a inclusive mindset. And when you're talking about the kind of the three dimensions of an inclusive mindset, number one is curiosity regarding others from diverse backgrounds. Makes sense. Number two, engaging people from diverse backgrounds. And number three is courage and commitment to diversity. And as you're trying to build a diverse team, if you're fortunate enough to have a talent pool that you can select the expertise, the skill set, the human capital, the experience from a talent pool that has diversity within that talent pool, you're luckier than I have ever been. My issues in the past have been that's just because of the types of teams and the types of skill sets and expertise and human capital that they need to bring to the table. I just haven't had the luxury of having a talent pool like that to develop. My teams have been mostly, homogeneous, just simply because the expertise I'm looking for. And there are basically three levels of inclusiveness. And the lowest one is minimization of differences, little curiosity regarding learning from people with different backgrounds. Trivializes the importance of ethnic and cultural differences, impact on diversity on work setting. And lastly, it tends to associate with those of a similar background. I can remember one of the first teams I put together in Southern California when I moved up to a director position with HealthNet. It was a med-econ, medical informatics team, and you're talking about a diverse team. I had probably one of the more diverse teams that HealthNet had ever seen. That's for sure, especially in Southern California. And the way I guess molded that team together is once a month we would go out to lunch together, and we rotated, and individuals that selected the lunch place that would go to lunch together, they ended up paying for it. So just like if it was, and you typically went on the last payday Friday, the last Friday payday of the month. And if I selected the place to go to lunch, then it was up to me to pay for all of it. If somebody else on the team did, it was their responsibility to pay for it. So, and it was an approach that I learned from working at the Economic Research Service, because again, bunch of economists. I mean, that building had 700 or 800 economists in it, and the group I worked with, an extremely diverse group, and we started doing that on. Except we were going every payday Friday, so I think there were 8 of us, and so you could see how it kind of revolved through. And and one thing it did, it not only enabled you to learn the backgrounds and learn kind of in a social setting the backgrounds of the individuals, but it gave you the opportunity to from at least from my perspective, go to some restaurants in DC, or even when I worked at HealthNet, go to some restaurants in Southern California that you might not have gone to otherwise, simply because of the diverse group that either worked for an economic research service or the group that I led at HealthNet. So that's one way to from a social perspective to embrace diversity and embrace the different backgrounds. And the second stage, it's a moderate acceptance and a moderate degree of curiosity about backgrounds, some acceptance for diverse backgrounds, and it stays silent when non-inclusiveness is observed. And so a lot of the individuals that I've worked for in the past probably fell into that minimization of differences or this moderate acceptance for a lot of different reasons. And I have no idea what their mindset was, but that seemed to be more along the lines of individuals that I've reported to in the past, and that just was their approach to diversity. And then the highest kind of level of inclusiveness is proactive inclusion. And it's active, respective interest in people from diverse backgrounds, engages in personal interactions with people from different backgrounds from their own, and minorities, and monitors and confronts attitudes, behaviors that run counter to value and diversity. And I've always liked to think I kind of fall into that kind of third level, because I've always tried to have a diverse team, because if for no other reason, it gives you a different aspect of mindset, creativity, ideas of having a very diverse team. You tend to develop a different level of efficiency, so to say, and it just helps to build human capital, if for no other reason that individuals on the team are improving or increasing their human capital simply by interacting with the other diverse individuals on the team. Again, the skill set and the expertise is needed to build the team and make it efficient, but the more diverse you can, if you have that talent pool that allows you to be diverse as you build your respective teams and build that expertise on those respective teams. And issues that could spring up with non-inclusiveness, you've got stereotyping, you've got lack of respect, you've got ignored input, counterproductive production inefficiency, members shut down, potential new ideas are lost. And to me, it's the last one, kind of tie into the decreased productivity and efficiency. But if you don't have a diverse team, think of all of the really creative and great ideas that you might miss. Because if you have a homogeneous team, you tend to I don't want to say you tend to end up with groupthink, but it is a distinct possibility that you end up with groupthink if you end up with a homogeneous team. So that's why you try to expand the diversity of your team, as long as you have a talent pool that is diverse enough to generate a team with the expertise, the human capital, and the skill set that you need. Um, and then the different levels of inclusiveness will handle differences in unique ways. And that's true. If you think about, we went through the three levels, they all have different approaches to handling diversity. May not be the best approach, but they all have different approaches to handling that diversity. And then we want to talk about the second challenge, when it's talking about maximizing the benefits of diversity while reducing its potential downside. And again, we've kind of gone through some of these, but the benefits of diversity, it's diversity provides benefits as a whole, more in-depth basis for problem solving and decision making, broader base of perspectives and experiences, and minimizes the risk of groupthink. Again, homogeneous team, you may end up with groupthink. With diversity, you're probably not going to end up with that groupthink because you've got too many different individuals from different backgrounds that have creative ideas and have just different mindsets when it comes to solving problems. When you've got a diverse group and you stand up in front of the team and you say, "Okay, team, we need to go from point A to point B. How do you think we do it?" And if you've got group think, it's like you may get one or two ideas, but if you've got a diverse team, you're going to have a multitude of diverse ideas. Some of them completely off the wall. Some of them that would, you hear the idea and you think, "What are you talking about?" And then later on, you sit back and you start reflecting on it and you think, "Well, so and so had that idea, and I thought it was really wacky at the time, but it's actually a pretty good idea." You take those ideas and you tweak them a little, and you can come up with some great strategies as far as improving productivity and efficiency. And when you're trying to maximize the benefits and trying to reduce the downside, it increases the stress and more potential for destructive conflict. And that's what we're talking about if you've got a diverse team, and that's somewhat of a downside. So I'm in graduate school at Ohio State, and Ohio State, in the econ department, a lot of individuals from South America, a lot of individuals from Pacific Rim, Far East, and there were six of us. Yeah, six of us, and I was on, ag econ side of the house. I was on that side of the river there that runs down through the campus at Ohio State, and so they had a grant from the Chicago. It was from the Mercantile Exchange in Chicago, and they wanted some individuals to work in commodity option futures pricing, that kind of thing, and they were looking for two types of individuals. They were looking for males, and they were looking for they wanted you married, because Ohio State had figured out that if you were married, that you had a wife pushing you down the road, and that you had a greater probability of finishing your PhD and going out into the workforce and being highly productive. So there were six of us, and what the brain trust at Ohio State did is they had six-person suites for graduate students. So they took one of the six of us and put us in each of those. They had six suites. They put one of us in with each suite. So I'm in a suite with a guy from Egypt, a girl from China. That's three of us. Guy from Argentina, guy from Brazil, guy from Sri Lanka. And you're talking about a diverse group, and Ohio State structured those in that way. So the woman from China, every time she came in, brought her lunch with her. And I have no idea what was in that pot that she brought in for lunch, but the odor was to the point that it was you couldn't stay in the office. You had to get up here, or at least I did. And so not only did I get up and leave, but the two guys from um, South America got up and left too. And this went on for about, I don't know, probably about a month. And at one point, so she came into the office in winter quarter, and Ohio State was on a quarter system at that time, and so winter quarter started like in January. So she's in there eating, and this whatever this stuff is in this pod, and guy from Egypt got so mad, and he had been telling her that she's got it. He'd been after her. He'd even gone and talked to the department secretary and said, "Look, we're not. It's just not working." And they'd call me into the department chair would call me in and talk to me about it. And I said, I don't know what to tell you. I said, she brings her lunch in and said, everybody's entitled to eat their lunch and eat whatever they want to. And, I guess eat it wherever you want to. And I said, I've always taken the approach that if I didn't like what she's eating, I just got up and left until she was finished with her lunch. And, she'd go into the kitchen and wash her dishes, and, everything seemed to be okay. He said, but I can't stay in there while she's, the odor is just more than I can handle. So we end up, it's bitterly cold, it's snowing, and the guy from Egypt finally jumps up, raises the window to the office, grabs her pot of food, and throws it out the window. And so I'm just sitting there thinking, what in the world? And so not only did I almost have a knockdown drag out with the guy from Egypt and this female from China, but the guy from Brazil spoke Portuguese, guy from Argentina spoke Spanish, and they hated each other. Two individuals from two different cultures in South America, and they almost on a daily basis came to blows. So, the guy from Sri Lanka was, he was kind of a weird dude to start with, but he just kind of sat over there at his desk and didn't say anything to anybody. But that's some of the stress that you can run into when you're talking about the potential for kind of a destructive conflict, and you as a leader have got to be able to manage those types of conflicts. There's also the potential for misunderstandings and stereotyping and distrust. Had a guy from when I set up that first team and did Health Net in San Diego, had a guy from India, one of my managers. Had a guy from India as one of my managers. My other manager was second generation Japanese that in Southern California, really nice individual. And of the group of the team I had, it was like equally divided. There were like 6 or 8 females and 6 or 8 males, and because I needed not so much a heavy programming group, but I needed some individuals that could do project management, some stuff. So it's kind of still a really diverse group. And so this individual from India, like the first week, I hire him, and he had great potential. Gone to UCLA, had an MBA. I mean, the guy had a great background and a great resume. And he comes in and he goes that first Monday, goes to like orientation and comes in on Tuesday morning, sticks his head in the door and said, "Hey, I'm in here ready to go to work." And I tell him, "Well, here's kind of what we need." He goes in his office, and I was always an early to work kind of individual, always have been. So it was just the two of us in there before everybody came in. And as the team started trickling in, I heard him come out of his office and approach one of the young ladies, and he says, "Why don't you go get me a cup of coffee and something to eat out of the break room?" And I'm thinking, oh boy. And then, she actually got up and went and got him something a cup of coffee and something to eat. And they were all, all working. And when it came lunchtime, I heard him come out and say, "Hey, you, uh, why don't you go?" There was a Wendy's around the corner from the building. He says, "Why don't you go to Wendy's and get me a hamburger and something to drink and bring it back? Go get my lunch for me." And I get up and I go out and I said, "You need to come here for a minute." And I had to take him in the office and set him down because in his mind, that was acceptable behavior in an office setting. Um, and I guess where he'd worked before, he worked with in a large group that had a lot of individuals from India and the Far East, and that was okay. But I said, "Dude, this is not going to work." I said, this is not the way it works here, especially in Southern California. I said, "They're going to have you for lunch if you don't straighten up." And he said, "Okay, I understand." Um, and so this is on a Tuesday. On a Wednesday, he comes in and, same thing, walks out and says, "Hey, go get my cup of coffee and something to eat." And I can't repeat what the girl, the other manager from Japan said to him, but at least, in mixed company, I can't compete it. I can't repeat it, but you're talking about somebody that set him straight. And that's the last time I heard him say anything about it. But you run into that, with misunderstandings. And, sometimes on these teams, diversity, they revert back to the storming stage. It's, you're trying to maximize benefits while minimizing the downside. And you as a leader, that's what you've got to do. You've got to manage this. And trust me, I've run into I even had an HR vice president when, she retired at Health Net. When she came down to see me for the last meeting before she retired, she said, "I'm going to retire and I'm going to write a book on all the weird stuff that your analysts have, generated over the years that I've been your HR representative." Said, "You have got the weirdest bunch of analysts I've ever seen." She says, "They are great and they can produce." She says, "But they are weird." And as a leader, that's what you've got to manage. You've got to have that inclusive mindset. You can't tolerate inappropriate actions. You don't want reverse discriminations, about anything. And you want everybody to be supportive of team members. And then, lately you've got to minimize DEI issues. And then the last challenge that they talk about, at least the authors talk about, it's that paradox of building unity while allowing for diversity. And you are, as a leader, you're balancing. You're walking like this tightrope, and you're trying to balance a leader's, desire to create a unified team culture and sense of purpose with the desire to embrace diversity. And that's where you're balancing that tightrope, because you as a leader, you're going to have goals. You have goals and you have a vision and you have a strategy, and you know what it's going to take to get your team and how you're going to motivate your team to get from point A to point B and to be a productive team and a productive leader for the organization that you work for. But you find yourself walking a tightrope. You're trying to figure out how to develop a team that is diverse with a lot of creativity and a lot of different ideas, but also homogeneous enough that they share your vision. They understand the goals. They understand what you think your strategy is to get, to accomplish the goals and get from point A to point B. And you want the followers on the same page, especially regarding metrics, goals, and norms. You want to recognize potential problems with diversity and inclusiveness and treat everyone fairly. And that's a key to a leader. Treat everyone fairly. As long as you are authentic and treat everyone fairly, for the most part, you won't have any issue with trying to create diverse teams and trying to move that diverse team in the direction and have everybody on the same page. Diverse employees better understand and treat a more diverse population. And I think they gave the example of Southwest in the text about a diverse population and diverse group of employees, because they are trying to provide customer service to a diverse population. And then lastly, it's kind of you want to kind of pull everything together. And I think it goes back to that effective leadership, leaders, followers, and context. And as you're developing these teams, at least with my experience in healthcare, context is extremely important because if you're doing customer service, you've got to have individuals that have some focus on helping customers that are calling in. They've got to have a command of the English language for these customers calling in. Or you're working in an area maybe with customer service where you have in Southern California, it's a real melting pot. And on a customer service team, you need individuals on the customer service team with different language skills. So depends on where that customer service team's located and where you're drawing your customers from. IT is IT, and medical informatics and analytics. It's all mathematically focused. You've got to be able to write codes. You've got to be able to explain. You've got to be a business analyst and tie the business needs to the IT needs and pull everything together. So it depends on the context. It depends on where you're located. It depends on what your talent pool. I mean, to me, mine's always been, especially in Buffalo, was the issue with the talent pool. It was hard for me to ever have a really somewhat a diverse team in Buffalo because the talent pool wasn't conducive to a lot of diversity because most of my team was built, they were either analysts or they were clinical. So I think it's up to you as a leader as you go forward in your leadership aspirations to always think about context. That's one of the most important things that a leader can focus on is the context. And always remember, you got to be flexible. If you're not flexible, you may have trouble as being a leader. That's going to tie it up for this piece. And I think we're going to, I guess, chapter 10. I think I've started already at some. It's talking about global leadership. And that'll be kind of an interesting chapter for those of you that may end up with a corporation that is globally based. So the next time we get together, we're going to talk about global leadership. Talk to everybody soon. Thank you.